April 1st was looming, and I was expecting a big prank from my husband, the Esther, this time. Our Joker story since the beginning of our marriage had seen an annual escalation in the severity of our pranks. It is true that the streak of mischief began with me one hot day when the and I went out. Despite my jacket buttoned up, I pretended to be cold as we were walking through the mall. I suddenly took off my jacket to reveal a t-shirt that read, "Yam Stupid," with an arrow pointing to the side. Standing next to me, he couldn't make out at first what was on my t-shirt, noticing only the amused reactions of passers-by. It took him a while to understand that every time I changed position was to make sure the arrow on my t-shirt was pointing at him. His face turned crimson, and that was the beginning of our official prank and grab war. And then there was the year I received an official-looking email supposed to be from the local health department, claiming that I had been listed as a sexual contact of one Anthony Sanders, and asking me to get tested immediately. What I had not anticipated was the CC line of all members of my office, suggesting that they had received the same alarming message. Most of them knew Anthony as an old college buddy, ignoring the fact that I had not seen him in over a year, let alone had been intimate with him. Lester, you told me? Well, read this time. Last year I had edited a photo replacing my husband's average-sized member with a comically tiny one and sent it to his office. In fact, he is above average in this area. He was furious and spent the night abroad before considering coming home. Even though I apologized, I ended up offering him 3 specific favors to entice him to come back. 3 intimate acts he couldn't refuse once he was home. And calmed down, he claimed our pranks had gotten out of hand, vowing never to get revenge or play a prank on me again. His promise seemed sincere, but I didn't believe it. I could almost see the gears turning in his head, plotting his revenge. I was certain that this year would uncover the darkest corners of his devious mind. I waited in a mixture of anticipation and fear. I went to extremes by listening into his calls, by placing a recorder in his car, and even scrutinizing our finances for anything suspicious. I was determined not to fall for it this time. Yet my searches turned up nothing incriminating. He was much smarter than I had thought. March passed by. The Easter seemed unchanged at home as I scrutinized his every move. March 31st at midnight. I was on high alert, but nothing happened just after midnight, which left me on the K-Vive. He had 19 hours left to put his plan into action and execution. I vowed to be ready to face whatever he had up his sleeve the next morning on April 1st. When I came down to the kitchen, he casually offered to make breakfast, a rare gesture that immediately raised suspicion. There was no way I was going to eat what he had made. I pretended I only wanted cereal that morning while pouring myself a bowl and adding milk. I discreetly sniffed it for substances, added nothing. An attempt at tasting confirmed their normality. I stood stubbornly, not having coffee, claiming to reduce my caffeine intake. In reality, I was avoiding him because he was doing it. I watched him make his English muffin au ham with egg and cheese. Bien aimé, almost tempted to ask for one. Despite the risk after breakfast, we both got ready for work while checking that my toothpaste was not tampered with, and that my water column retained its usual scent, not the smell of skunk. Everything seemed normal, except for my anxiety, which was skyrocketing. I inspected my car for any suspicious devices, wanting to have one of those border-crossing mirrors on a stick to examine it underneath. Everything seemed normal. But my heart was beating fast when I started the engine. Testing the fins uselessly, I berated myself. The Esther would not resort to anything physically harmful. I repeat it to myself to reassure myself, but the doubt persists. He was seriously upset about my latest prank at work. My best friend Mara greeted me eagerly. "Kelly, did he do something last night? I'm dying to know." I had confided in Mara my apprehension about the impending April Fool's Day from the Esther. She had applauded my prank from last year, then cheekily asked for an unedited version of the photo, or better yet, a private viewing in our bedroom. This girl was seriously in need of some action, and soon he went silent, but I'm sure he's up to something. I can feel it in the night air. "Oh God, I love slipping song lyrics into conversations," I said, laughing. "I think he's just dragging me out to the edge, and well, he doesn't have far to go for now. But trust me, whatever he does, I won't fall for it. He may be the prince of pranks, but I am the queen of jokes." We laughed, and then I finally had my much-awaited morning coffee after checking my desk for any unexpected surprises. I continued my work relatively normally, while occasionally thinking about what might await me later. The first time my office phone rang, I practically jumped out of my chair. I laughed at my own nervousness. Nothing out of the ordinary happened for the rest of the day. I expected a delivery of items that would be accidentally revealed in front of my colleagues. Fortunately, nothing of the sort happened as the end of the workday approached. My anxiety was skyrocketing by 5:05 p.m. I hit the road, narrowly missing a red light as my mind focused on what was waiting for me at home. I gave myself a light slap to get my mind back on driving safely as I arrived home. I started making dinner. Esther came home at his usual time, looking completely drained. I remember it was a comedy, and I expected him to engage in more drama soon. Hard day. You deal with too many graduates struggling with basic math. Your comment hits too close to home to be funny. But that's not what's weighing on me. I guess it's obvious I'm not as cheerful as usual. Honestly, it hasn't been a very hard day, just infuriating. It was the quarterly report deadline, and I had a bunch of mundane details and number matching to sort out. I usually finish before lunch, but today I had a hard time. Reconciling two totals that were supposed to match it took me almost an extra 4 hours to discover my stupid mistake. I even missed lunch and almost called him to say I would be late for dinner. Luckily, I realized the mistake and finished the report before leaving, so I am absolutely starving. I hope dinner is on its way 20 minutes at most. Why don't I make you a drink while I finish it? Great idea. I like your way of thinking. Liceste. There leaned over and placed a kiss on my cheek before heading over to the cabinet where we stored the alcohol. He took the bourbon and made himself a drink before settling into the living room, watching reruns of SW People. It was funny to think he would ever venture into a place crawling with mosquitoes, alligators, and snakes. I suspected he had a thing for people with Cajun accents. I tried to strike up a conversation over dinner, but all I could do was focus on finding the imminent woman. I ended up asking, "Do you have anything planned for tonight?" But nothing, zero. Absolutely nothing. After the quarterly report mess, I didn't even consider bringing work home. I just want to relax with my favorite girl by my side since she's not here. You'll have to do, he said, joked, and I nudged him a little. I thought we could watch a movie and nibbled some popcorn. Are you absolutely interested after eating? I loaded the dishwasher with the dinner dishes. I put the popcorn in the microwave and brought it in a big bowl to the living room when it was ready. I brought our usual drinks to relax us both. What do you want to watch? You know, I like sex and violence movies, but tonight I don't care. I'll let you choose tonight. Why not Redou's? There's a bit of romance in addition to the nudity and violence, not to mention Patrick's body says. He laughs. It looks good to me. I haven't seen it for a long time. I love the moment where the polar bear in plush, you're on the lackey. It was a polar bear, or normal bear. I thought it was a polar bear. But we'll see. We were watching the movie and eating popcorn. I had a few rooms and cokes against the bourbons and the beers of the Esther. I was finally starting to relax and let my guard down. Suddenly the doorbell rang and my internal alarm went off. That's it, I said to myself immediately. No one comes to our house unexpectedly after dark. I immediately put my mind on alert, and I was ready to ruin the trick he had thought up. The Esther, of course, acted categorically. I knew who it could be. That's true. I went to open the door. I was surprised to see there was a man. Not just an ordinary man, but a huge biker at the door. 2 other people were on bikes in the driveway. I shook my head in disbelief. I thought if it was okay. I greeted the biker, covered in scars and tattoos, with a smile. I know what's going on. Sorry to bother you, ma'am. This is where the party is. My mind is racing. I'm sure now that you're here. I put my arm around his waist, leading him to the center of the living room. Those tight abs matched the bulging biceps on his tattooed arms when he walked in. My husband, seeing me draping around this stranger, Ab jumped off the couch. He walked halfway towards us, baffled. Kelly. Who is it? Like you don't know. He is here to fulfill my fantasy. What a fantasy to be involved in a biker gang. I didn't even know it was your fantasy. I thought, wait, I get it. Now it's your April Fool's joke. It's funny. You had me going for a second. I thought we agreed to get this over with. What were you planning to take her to our room and pretend while I wait in agony? Okay, buddy. My wife's prank is over. You can go. My name is not Pale Moron. I'm the bandit, and I'm staying until the lady tells me otherwise. Well, I want you to stay, bandit. I turned around, planting an exaggerated kiss on him. The Esther rushed over. That's enough. He walked over to Bandy, who grabbed the Esther by the throat, making him stumble and choke. I chuckled when Bandy pulled me closer, caressing my behind while kissing me. I gave him back the device, feeling his excitement through his pea heel. It was already quite a scene. The Esther charged again, and this time Bandy punched him with a single punch, knocking him to the ground. Turning to me, Bandy asked, "Do you want me to take care of him or let him stand there and watch?" "Let him watch. That'll teach him not to pick a fight with me." "Okay, I'll inform the others," said Bandit, as he went out to call the other two inside. One of the men looked around the room. "What's going on? This doesn't look like a party. This woman wants to meet bikers before going to the real party. At least she has some nice assets. I'll take care of his behind first." "What's wrong with the guy on the floor?" "Is her husband. A mouillette. She wants him to watch, tie him to a chair, and tape his mouth shut. I can't stand an adult complaining. What do I use to tie him up? There's rope and duct tape in the garage, and I proposed, and one of them went to get him." The Esther yelled, whether it was a joke or not. "Kelly, this ends our marriage, be a man, Licest. There, I know you set this up now. You're mad because I'm not playing the game the way you wanted. Don't try to divorce me over something you started. I'm just having a little fun at your expense." The Esther charged forward again, but was overpowered by the bikers, who tackled him convincingly onto the chair. Their coordination surprised me. I wondered if they had rehearsed. "It's time to party. Do you have any alcohol?" asked one of the men. "The liquor cabinet is above and to the right of the stove. There are some beers in the fridge, help yourself." And I indicated they took the bottles without worrying about the mixtures. Bandit turned to me. "How do you want to start? How far did he say go?" I asked. Bandit looked perplexed. "He said I could go all the way, any way I wanted, in a rephrased version. If we go all the way, I'd need a little help to set the mood." "You have something stronger than alcohol." "Absolutely. I always have something on me." He went to get something intriguing on his bike. A sip later, I found myself exchanging kisses with three while smiling at Lester, who seemed to have difficulty freeing himself, approaching me. The Bandit declared, "It's time to dance, darling," tearing off my dress and quickly getting rid of my underwear. Soon he was naked, as were his companions. Panic began to set in. I hadn't planned on letting things get this bad. I yelled at Lester, "Consider it a lesson if you try to outsmart me by getting involved with his friend." But when I felt his orgasm coming, I tried to pull away. "Too bad. Your pleasure is none of our business. Your job is to satisfy us," they retorted. The URE that followed seemed unreal, despite my objections and resistance in the middle of this chaotic group. In the end, my anger was boiling inside me at Lester for orchestrating this whole thing, and allowing these men to do such things to me every time I threw a glance at Esther in the armchair. Rage was rising, but I hid my distress. I wanted him to believe I was rejoicing, but I couldn't let him believe his prank had worked after a few hours. The bikers left. My movements were laborious, but I managed to reach the kitchen and grab a sharp knife when I wanted to free Esther. I discovered that his wrists and ankles were injured. His ankles were bleeding. The ropes had torn his skin. This seemed to have helped him for sure. I expected him to explode. Maybe even to lash out physically once the ropes and tape were finally removed. Standing, I stared at them, ready to face his expected fury. But instead of a verbal reaction or physical, he looked at me with silent rage, pushed me to the side, and up the stairs. I took refuge in the downstairs bathroom to clean the remains of the bikers from my skin, noticing numerous sweats scattered on various parts of my body. I remained in the bathroom when the front door slammed shut. A few moments later, the screech of the Esther's car signaled his departure. I assumed he would go sulk in a motel like he had done in the past. I silently celebrated my victory in the annual April Fool's Day prank and went to bed. Saturday morning came and my phone went on ringing. It was Mara spilling the beans. "What the hell did it? Was serious. You won't believe it. I can't wait to tell you we can have lunch at Fry DS. Absolutely, don't you dare tease me soon." We were sitting at the GIF, enjoying our meal. I told the story of the encounter with the biker who was supposed to be a fake, as well as the furious reaction of the Esther. "Oh my God, you were involved in this. It was your own husband who set you up and you were okay with it." She put on a terrible southern accent. "I declare I have fumes." She pretended to faint and I laughed out loud. This idiot of the Esther tried to make me believe that I was going to face a cuitor de biker before shouting April Fools, so I foiled his prank by turning it into a real event. I didn't mean to go this far, but in a strange way it worked. I doubt he'll try something like this again. Kelly, are you sure he set it all up? It's hard to believe Esther orchestrated something this extreme. If not, you could be in for a messy divorce. Oh gosh, I just thought of it. Do you have a video of this? If so, get rid of it. Well, after making a copy for myself, I disregarded Mara's last remark, but her first words sparked a disturbing thought. And if this wasn't a setup after all, the thought of a potential divorce was weighing heavily on me, a possibility too dire to consider. I felt to have broken up my marriage quickly. I pushed the idea away. It had to be a setup. That's what I'm holding on to. I reassured myself, trying to believe it was then that something hit me. Tell me, when was the last time a biker showed up at your door to party? I'd like. You're probably right. I hope so. Any idea of where Esther is? Probably sulking in a motel. Furious that I'd gotten over his prank. Just then my phone rang. Wait. Martha. Maybe it's him. Disappointment washed over me as I realized it wasn't Esther, but an unknown number. Hello. A voice I didn't recognize called me, asked, "Is that Inch?" I groaned inside, thinking that it was a telemarketer. I am not interested in what you are selling, and the warranty on my car is good, despite what your records say. Do not hang up. Mrs. Lynch, it is the police, of course. It is the police. It is just another part of my husband's failed prank. Tell him it didn't work. Ma'am, I assure you it's the police. We checked your house and found that you weren't there. We need to discuss your husband's injuries. The emergency room doctor informed us we have already spoken to your husband. Can you come to the police station? Now ask for the Inspector Fredericks. I'm done playing this stupid game. I'll be home in an hour, I think. Kangan, if you're an inspector and you want to talk, come later. I ended the call. The police called you. Kelly, it's getting serious. You shouldn't go see him. That's what the guy on the phone said. But I'm not sure who he really is. For all I know, no, this is another strategy of Esther. He is pushing the joking too far. I don't want to dwell on it. Let's have dessert. I feel like chocolate. When I got home after lunch, I found Esther missing, which was not unexpected. As I started to take off my jacket and hang it up, the doorbell interrupted me, letting out a big sigh. I head towards the door. A policewoman and a man who appeared to be a detective were standing there, flashing their badges and asking to come in. The shock hit me. It was real, quite different from what I had anticipated. Doubt set in. Maybe they weren't really law enforcers? I asked to see their identities. They showed badges, ID cards, licenses, driver's license, and business cards. Everything was in order. Apologizing for my initial skepticism, I welcomed them. It was then that I remembered that I hadn't tidied up the night before. The living room hadn't been touched since I went to bed, with empty beer and alcohol bottles strewn on the sofa and the carpet. And of course, the armchair. The inspector walks over to the chair where the Esther was tied up. He observes the cut ropes, the duct tape used, and the blood stains. I hadn't realized there was so much blood. This is where your husband was tied up. Yes, but it's a little more complicated. Complicated? You mean he tied himself up, bayed, and injured his wrist and ankles just to make up a story of abuse? No. It was a poorly conceived April Fool's prank. My husband orchestrated a prank to make me believe that a biker gang was going to attack me. I turned the tables on him by making him believe that I wanted something that made him uncomfortable. He got angry and took off when I released him, even though he first tied up a biker, a named bandit, and a few others. This matches your husband's story. We have already spoken to this bandit. He is cooperating to get a more lenient sentence. He claims that you invited them to a party, that you asked them for drugs, and that you engaged in consensual activity. He claims that you asked him to tie up your husband so that he would watch the event. He thought it was in your mutual interest. According to him, you did not resisted. I need to know if it's true, or if we should file a complaint against him too. I tried to stop him, but I couldn't. I was trying to teach my husband a lesson. He created this mess, and I just went along with it. You don't understand. Tears interrupted my words, and I paused before continuing. You said that Esther was in the emergency room. How is he doing? He's still there. He's more angry than anything else. His wrists and ankles are bandaged and sore, as expected. He was released after a few hours, but he came to the station to file a complaint. The doctor said he should recover physically. I'm relieved that he's not seriously injured, but it was really his fault. I didn't want to be made fun of. I would say you handled this pretty efficiently. But ma'am, it's not my place to judge fault. It's the judges and jurors who decide that. As you'll soon see, Ms. Lynch, I'm arresting you for assault and forcible confinement of your husband. And as for your health, you must get tested for STDs. One of the bikers you were with has a severe and persistent STD. You have the right to a lawyer. Please, it was to play a prank on me. I fought back. You can't arrest me for that. It was his fault. Tell that to the judge. I ended up in jail on trying to pay bail. I found out my cards had been canceled. Despite my humiliation, I called my father, concocting a story until they told me the Esther had already contacted my close father. Of Esther scolded me for minutes as I sobbed. Finally, he agreed to pay my bail and take me home. When I got home, I texted the Esther, begging him to have a discussion to clear things up. He replied me coldly. Everything is clear for me. My answer is coming soon. I was hoping for a face-to-face, or at least a call. Instead, I received divorce papers stating physical violence and emotional torment. I cried once again. I had let a stupid PHC ruin my marriage. An impractical joke, to say the least. The trial went quickly. Bandy took the stand as the main witness. He explained that he had arrived at the wrong address, that he had been invited by me and others to a party. He had tied up my husband on my orders, and that he had consensual intercourse with me in exchange for his testimony against me. He received a minor sentence for the false imprisonment charge. However, it was my husband's testimony that was the most profound. He admitted to our prank story, but insisted that he had sworn to himself that he would never cheat on me again. He believed that I trusted him. The events of that night shook him to the core, shocking him to an unfathomable level under oath. Esther acts any prior contact with Bandy. Any consent to a simulacrum has a real menage a quarter involving his wife, and stated that his love and respect for me had faded that night, showing the scars on his wrists and ankles. He indicated they were a lasting reminder of why he could never trust me again. His admission that he might have a hard time trusting another woman brought tears to the eyes even among the female jurors. My case fell apart when it was my turn to testify. Telling my side of the story through tears, I could feel the jury's disapproval. Especially from the women I had hoped to convince. The guilt weighed on me, obvious to all. Unsurprisingly, the verdict was guilty. I was sentenced to 3 to 5 years, a leniency that could have been more severe back in county jail. I waited to be transferred to prison when space became available. The final divorce papers arrived while I was incarcerated, but I barely even learned of the deal one day. Lester visited me. His presence left me perplexed. "Kelly, orange suits you," he remarked with sarcasm. I guess I deserve the sarcasm, Lest. Though I want you to know that I really regret what I did to you. Even if you didn't orchestrate it, I should have never done it. Too little, too late. Hey, Esther, you're still convinced I set you up? I would need a really twisted motive for that. Maybe aim for a divorce with the best conditions, an easier split than 50 to 50. I'd have to be cunning. I'd put money aside for months, so you wouldn't notice in our accounts enough to bribe bikers, cheat fix, and get a minor sentence. But I would need a connection with a gang. Like, for example, someone at work whose brother needed my support for a promotion. I then stupidly suggested that the bikers could go as far as you let them go, thus giving you a chance to get revenge. I was stunned when you reached that level. Seeing you enjoying it destroyed me after that. All guilt vanished. I spent days torn between the desire to end it with both of us. But I chose to put you behind bars. I knew it. I was right. Yes, you were right. We are both idiots in this story, but it's you who is behind bars, not me. So tell me, who is the bigger idiot?